Then Meek Mill came, but he couldn't get financing.
Meek Mill couldn't give him financing?
They don't.
These guys, they're full of
Yeah, they're
This didn't explode because of a house. It exploded because of what the bank saw. When 50 Cent started publicly pressing Meek Mill, and then a realtor casually revealed that Meek was denied financing on a $5.2 million property in Voorhees, New Jersey, the internet treated it like gossip. But this wasn't gossip. This was a credit decision. And credit decisions are cold. They don't care about Instagram captions, chain collections, or platinum plaques. They care about verifiable income, debt ratios, liquidity, risk exposure. According to lending standards and underwriting models used in high-value mortgages, banks aren't betting on image. They're betting on consistency. That house became a spotlight because just days before, the same property was nearly secured by Philadelphia Eagles quarterback Jalen Hurts, a player with a structured $255 million NFL contract and predictable income streams. The contrast wasn't subtle. It was surgical. One walked in and the only obstacle was construction timelines. The other walked in and the obstacle was financial approval. And psychologically, this hits people harder than any diss track ever could, because it challenges the mythology of the self-made millionaire rapper. This resonates because in a culture obsessed with flexing, the bank just audited the flex. Now critics will argue this is normal, that entertainers often structure income differently, that liquidity can be tied up in investments, that one deal doesn't define wealth. And that's fair. But here's what's still...
Jalen Hurts came by.
Oh, really?
But he wanted the house done by July, not now.
Here's the detail nobody is talking about. Jalen Hurts didn't hesitate over the price. He hesitated over the timeline. The only issue he had was whether the property could be completed and move-in ready within 2 months. That distinction is everything. Signals leverage. Signals certainty. Based on contract structures in professional sports, guaranteed income transforms how banks assess borrowers. Predictability lowers perceived risk. Risk determines approval. It's that simple. Hurts walked into that property like a man managing logistics, not negotiating survival. At a human level, that lands because stability is power. When your only concern is time, not money, you're operating from strength. And this is where the story quietly shifts from celebrity drama to financial warfare. The house didn't expose a rapper. It exposed two different economic realities living in the same zip code. One backed by institutional confidence, the other facing institutional doubt. Psychologically, voters, fans, and everyday people respond to this because we all understand one thing. The system doesn't lie when it comes to money. It either approves you or it doesn't. And when it doesn't, it's rarely emotional. It's mathematical. If this pattern continues, flashy branding versus structured capital, we're going to see a broader reckoning in celebrity culture. Because credibility in the next era won't be about perception. It'll be about paperwork. And that's where the story gets uncomfortable.
Last July.
He loved the house. He was going to give, at that time, it was $5.2 million. Finished. I said, listen, I'll be honest with you, there's no way I can finish this house.
Now let's widen the frame. This wasn't just about Meek Mill walking through a front door. It was about two archetypes colliding. On one side, an NFL quarterback with long-term guarantees, conservative spending narratives, and institutional trust. On the other, a rapper whose career has been built on the image of relentless financial ascent. When the realtor said Meek toured the property, liked it, and attempted to move forward, only to hit a financing wall, that's when the timeline caught fire. Because the rejection wasn't public. It was procedural. The public part came later. And here's what most people miss. Banks don't deny based on vibes. They deny based on documentation, income volatility, debt obligations, cash flow patterns, asset liquidity. Data from recent lending trends shows that entertainers often face stricter scrutiny due to fluctuating revenue streams. That doesn't mean someone is broke. It means the system sees instability. Now critics will argue that wealth isn't measured by mortgages, that ultra-wealthy individuals sometimes choose financing for tax reasons or leverage strategies. True. But even in leverage strategies, approval is rarely optional. It's foundational. This is what's really happening. The culture is witnessing the collision between narrative wealth and institutional validation. And when the institution says no, the narrative starts to crack. At a psychological level, this spreads because people are tired of performance. They want proof. If celebrities continue to sell dreams without structural backing, audiences will eventually turn from admiration to skepticism. And when skepticism becomes the dominant lens, reputations don't collapse loudly. They erode quietly. And that slow erosion is far more dangerous.
Then Meek Mill came, but he couldn't get financing.
Meek Mill could have given financing?
They don't.
These guys, they're full of shit.
Yeah,
Let this settle for a second. A rapper known for luxury watches, designer everything, and stacks of visible cash could not secure approval on a $5.2 million mortgage. That sentence carries weight not because of the number, but because of what it implies. The bank reviewed whatever documentation was submitted and declined. No spectacle, no commentary, just a quiet no. And when the realtor added that this wasn't unusual for rappers, that's when the narrative shifted from individual embarrassment to industry pattern. Based on financial reporting across entertainment sectors, many artists operate on advances, touring spikes, and irregular royalty cycles. High income doesn't always equal stable income. And banks lend on stability. This is where emotion needs to separate from analysis. Cold truth. Lenders prioritize risk mitigation over reputation. If debt-to-income ratios don't align, approval doesn't happen. That's not hate. That's underwriting. But culturally, this feels like betrayal because fans were sold permanence. Psychologically, audiences attach identity to the success of artists they support. When cracks show, it feels personal. Challenges belief. And belief is powerful currency. If more financial realities start surfacing behind curated lifestyles, we may be entering an era where celebrity influence shrinks and financial literacy grows. Because once people realize the difference between wealth that's loud and wealth that's durable, the applause changes. And that's what no one built on pure image wants to confront.
Guys, they're full of shit.
Yeah, they're full of shit.
Wow. Well, he's friends with Mike Rubin.
This is where the story stops being about paperwork and starts being about power. Because the realtor didn't just mention a denial. He mentioned proximity. Meek Mill courtside at Philadelphia 76ers games, photographed beside billionaire investor Michael Rubin, a man who operates in circles where private equity flows like water. The implication was subtle but brutal. If you're that close to capital, why couldn't capital close for you? And that's what made the internet erupt. Not the mortgage, the contradiction. Social media, particularly on X, turned it into a referendum on an entire culture. Athletes versus entertainers, structured contracts versus volatile fame, guaranteed income versus perceived wealth. According to financial reporting trends, athletes with long-term deals often present lower lending risk because their income is fixed and documented, while entertainers frequently face scrutiny due to fluctuating revenue cycles. That doesn't mean one group is smarter. It means one group is statistically more predictable. And banks worship predictability. Now layer in the psychology. This resonates because people are increasingly allergic to performance. The public has watched rappers project endless abundance. The cars, the chains, the entourages, while quietly suspecting that much of it is leveraged, leased, or liquidity poor. When a mortgage denial surfaces, it confirms what many already felt but couldn't prove. Real versus manufactured. Authentic capital versus curated lifestyle. Critics online pointed to Meek's estimated $20 million net worth and argued that if that figure were structurally solid, a $5.2 million home shouldn't trigger rejection. Now, to be fair, net worth is not cash flow. Assets can be tied up. Credit profiles matter. Debt exposure matters. A bank declining a loan does not automatically equal bankruptcy. That's the calm, analytical truth. But perception doesn't operate on nuance. It operates on contrast. And the contrast between Meek and Jalen Hurts was devastating. Hurts, praised for renting modestly during the season and avoiding unnecessary splurges despite a $255 million deal, represented institutional confidence. Meek represented cultural bravado colliding with institutional doubt. But this story didn't begin with a house. It began in 2007, when a 19-year-old Meek was arrested in Philadelphia on gun and drug charges, the spark that ignited a 12-year probation odyssey that would drain not just freedom but fortune. Convicted in 2008, sentenced in 2009 to prison and 7 years of probation, he entered a legal maze that repeatedly pulled him back into courtrooms and, at times, back behind bars. Under Judge Janice Brinkley, probation violations stacked up. Missed travel notifications, failed drug tests, technical infractions, each one costing time, mobility, and earning power. For a touring artist, house arrest isn't just punishment. It's revenue suffocation. When he was sentenced in 2017 to 2 to 4 years for probation violations, the backlash was national. Figures like Jay-Z and Kevin Hart rallied publicly. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court intervened. Free Meek became a cultural slogan. It looked like vindication. What few calculated was the financial crater left behind. Reports suggest tens of millions spent on legal defense and lost earnings. Even if those numbers fluctuate, the pattern is undeniable. Extended litigation plus restricted touring equals unstable income history. Based on lending logic, instability equals elevated risk. Cold equation. No emotion. Add to that a reported IRS dispute in 2025 over millions in alleged back taxes, and you begin to see why an underwriting department might hesitate. Now critics will argue that the real villain here is the criminal justice system, that Meek's financial volatility was engineered by over-policing and excessive probation control. There's weight to that argument. Systemic pressure absolutely constrains upward mobility. But here's the uncomfortable counterpoint. Once capital is earned, sustainability requires discipline, structure, and insulation from volatility. The system can wound you, cannot manage your balance sheet. Then comes the industry dimension. Meek publicly accused Roc Nation of failing to honor a $55 million Dream Chasers agreement, claiming only $5 million materialized up front. Whether fully accurate or contractually complex, the allegation underscores a broader industry pattern. Artists often lack leverage in negotiations. When you're broke and offered a lifeline, long-term terms can feel secondary. That's not greed. That's survival psychology. At a human level, this lands because many fans understand what it means to sign something under pressure. But business doesn't reward emotion. It rewards foresight. His real estate history adds another layer. An Atlanta estate listed high, eventually sold to Rick Ross for $4.2 million in cash, far below its ambitious asking price, signaled potential liquidity strain. Publicly seeking $5 million in independent funding for creative projects despite a reported 8-figure net worth raised further questions about access versus valuation. Wealth on paper does not equal wealth in hand. And that distinction is everything. Then hovering above all of this is Curtis 50 Cent Jackson, the master of humiliation as strategy. Their rivalry dates back to 2016. When Meek took lyrical shots and 50 responded not with diss records but with memes, financial taunts, and surgical...
Look, you see Meek Mill, I didn't say nothing.
Nah, I'm gonna have to disagree with you.
Nothing, right? Because he didn't deserve it.
You didn't make a record.
When 50 Cent was asked why he never made a full diss track about Meek Mill, his answer was colder than any bar. He didn't need to. In rap, a diss track is respect. Means you're worth the energy. By refusing, 50 reframed the hierarchy. He treated Meek not like a rival, but like a situation. And that psychological move hits harder than lyrics. A diss invites competition. A dismissal signals you're beneath it. Critics might say that's just trolling. But strategically, it's dominance. In perception wars, silence can be louder than sound. So the real question is, what does it mean when your opponent doesn't even think you deserve a beat?
But you made memes.
I didn't make one record, not one punchline.
You got to live with that. That wasn't a diss. That was a verdict. When 50 Cent delivered that line about Meek Mill, he wasn't attacking music. He was attacking circumstance. And that's more brutal. They claimed to squash their beef in 2017, but by 2024 it was back, with 50 mocking Meek's low album sales and vacation posts. In today's industry, numbers equal narrative. Fair or not, first week sales become ammunition. Critics will argue streaming has changed everything, and they're right. But perception doesn't wait for nuance. Once you're framed as declining, the internet amplifies it. And in modern rap beef, humiliation spreads faster than bars. That's where the story gets uncomfortable.
Because you didn't deserve the punchline. Because you're getting bodied by R&B singing. The boy said the line already. You gotta live with that.
50 once admitted he wanted to punch Meek during a face-to-face encounter, but didn't. That wasn't peace. That was calculation. A punch brings charges. A meme brings millions of views. In today's power structure, optics beat violence. Social media is the real battlefield. Physical fights fade. Viral narratives compound. Critics may call it petty, but strategically it's efficient. Reputation damage lasts longer than bruises. So was Meek fighting a man? Or fighting a machine built for humiliation?
Who pick fights with people who don't want to fight, those are punks. Like there's a punk, Meek Mill. When I ran into him finally, he said...
Then comes the harder question. What did Meek actually build? Philadelphia veteran Ashino questioned whether Dream Chasers ever became a true pipeline for new stars. That critique cuts because legacy isn't just personal success, it's multiplication. According to industry trends, the most durable artists evolve into platforms, not just performers. If Dream Chasers didn't consistently launch talent, that suggests branding outpaced infrastructure. That's not hate, that's business analysis. And business doesn't reward image, it rewards structure.
I need to talk to you like a man on the side, put me to the side, and he was talking and I was looking at him and I wanted to punch him.
Ashino's point that Dream Chasers never fully produced breakout artists goes deeper than rap politics. It suggests Meek mastered visibility but struggled with scalability. Revenue fuels lifestyle. Infrastructure builds empires. Critics will say not every rapper needs to be a mogul. True. But when your message centers on ownership and empowerment, expectations rise. And when outcomes don't match the rhetoric, scrutiny follows. The culture is shifting from applauding noise to examining structure. And that shift changes everything.
If you just take a step back, Meek has never actually built a company.
Ashino's point that Dream Chasers never fully produced breakout artists goes deeper than rap politics. It suggests Meek mastered visibility but struggled with scalability. Revenue fuels lifestyle. Infrastructure builds empires. Critics will say not every rapper needs to be a mogul. True. But when your message centers on ownership and empowerment, expectations rise. And when outcomes don't match the rhetoric, scrutiny follows. The culture is shifting from applauding noise to examining structure. And that shift changes everything.
Dream Chasers is a cool name, it's got a cool logo, but there's never really been artists that have come out from Dream Chasers that have been successful.